Hey, come here. Hey, where's your wife at, bud? Where's your wife at?
She's dead on the floor in that room.
That's mom.
That's mom.
Yeah.
September 20th, 2024. Mississippi State Courthouse. A 13-year-old child prodigy listens to her sentence for one of the most shocking crimes in the state's history. What happened in this seemingly well-off family will make you look at your children differently. And I simply must tell you this story, because no one, not teachers, parents, or psychologists, could see how the brilliant mind of a 13-year-old child turned into a tool for brutal murder. Carly Gregg was born in 2009 in a small town called Flowood, located in the state of Mississippi, USA. Her parents were Ashley and Kevin Gregg. Carly spent almost her entire childhood with her mother Ashley, because her father was almost never around. Rumor had it that the girl's biological father was not the best father on earth. At times, he abused alcohol and prohibited substances, and subjected Ashley to various acts of physical aggression. In connection with this, the woman even sought help from the police, and later broke up with the man altogether. But let's get back to Carly. She was a very smart and clever child, and even skipped a grade in her school. When Carly was only 13 years old, she took a rather difficult exam called the ACT, which most students in the USA take shortly before entering the country's higher educational institutions. For reference, it should be noted that in the case of an ideal score on this test, the student receives 36 points. At the same time, only a small fraction of the test takers managed to cope with this task, and Carly, despite her young age, was able to score 30 right away. In other words, she was only 6 points away from a perfect result. In fact, the girl scored the same number of points that, as a rule, excellent students of an older age score. And this said something about her mental abilities. In the spring of 2019, Carly's mom, Ashley, met a 45-year-old man named Heath Smiley, who worked as a physiotherapist assistant. They immediately entered into a romantic relationship, and already in June 2020, they got married. Unfortunately, I do not know how Carly took this news and what kind of person she really was. However, it could be said with certainty that, despite her mental abilities, she was interested in rather controversial things, such as physical aggression and cold weapons. While studying in 7th grade, the girl got into trouble for the first time for secretly bringing a Swiss Army knife to school. For this act, she was even sent to an alternative school for troubled teenagers. It is known that she studied there for about 6 months, and only after that the leadership of her previous school allowed her to return. Although later she still changed educational institutions and continued her studies at a high school located in the city of Brandon, the administrative center of Rankin County, Mississippi. In fact, she was just a 10-minute drive from her house. Ironically, Carly's mother, Ashley, was a geometry teacher at the same school. If you thought that this was a plus for the girl, and that in this way she could get the necessary attention and support from her mother, then this was far from the case. In fact, Ashley and Carly had a difficult relationship, especially outside of school. Therefore, Carly had to go through a lot, seeing her mom both at home and at school. And although she was still the smartest girl in her class, she was also the youngest, and other teenagers took advantage of this and sometimes manipulated her. In particular, they made Carly do their schoolwork, as well as help them with various projects. In other words, the girl was in an extremely uncomfortable situation. Because of her behavior, she had conflicts with her mother and stepfather from time to time. Once, Carly was caught helping classmates cheat on a test. That time, the girl hacked into her teacher's computer and photographed all the answer options, and then gave those answers to several classmates. As a result, as often happens, all these answers fell into the hands of other students. And when everything was revealed, Carly was punished, and what happened became another reason for a serious quarrel with her mother. It is noteworthy that at this time Carly already had a boyfriend. His name was Anthony, and since the young people had contradictory conversations from time to time, Carly's mom said that she should no longer meet with this boy. And for some time they really broke up, but ultimately their close communication resumed. Then Ashley simply decided to leave everything as it was. Perhaps she trusted her daughter. Who knows? Nevertheless, it was reliably known that already at that time, she exercised close parental control and sometimes viewed all of Carly's mobile devices. She also set restrictions on the use of some applications. In particular, the woman forbade her daughter to use applications such as TikTok and made Carly put her phone away every time she went to bed. Therefore, before going to bed, the girl always left her phone in the kitchen or on her mother's nightstand. And it must be said that one of the main reasons why Ashley checked her daughter's phone was her sincere desire to resume communication with her biological father, whom her mother wanted to deprive of all parental rights. Ashley simply did not believe that Kevin could become a good role model for Carly, since he still abused alcohol and prohibited substances, and in general was a rather cruel person. And when the woman found out that her daughter had disregarded her prohibitions and began to communicate with her father, she established even more prohibitions and rules inside the house. In fact, this only pushed Carly to more protest. And although she was a smart, clever girl, this did not save her from the influence of classmates, some of whom were about 15 years old at that time. It's no secret that this age is considered almost the most rebellious period in a person's life, and many teenagers begin to engage in such things as the use of prohibited substances and the consumption of alcoholic beverages. This was the environment that young Carly found herself in. And in addition to her new and at the same time controversial hobbies, she also began to have obvious mental health problems. Carly, to put it mildly, was not in the best mental state. And later, many of her classmates noted that at this time, she began to consciously injure herself with a knife. Fortunately, Ashley found out about this in time and persuaded Carly to take a course of therapy for anxiety and stress. However, she never completed it. Later, Carly was prescribed so-called antipsychotic drugs, but then they were replaced with medications for the treatment of symptoms of depressive or generalized anxiety disorder. Apparently, Carly was transferred to this medication because specialists believed that she had certain mental problems that antipsychotic drugs simply could not cope with. And it is quite difficult for me to judge whether there was any connection here, but Carly switched to this drug just 5 days before the attack on her mom. The morning of that day was ordinary. Ashley and Carly went to school as usual. Sometime after they left, Heath also went to work. People who saw Ashley and Carly that day said that there was nothing unusual or strange about their behavior. According to them, they communicated quite normally with each other and did not show any aggression. After lunch, they returned home. At this time, Heath was still at work. Their after-school routine was quite simple. Returning home, Carly usually went outside and walked her dogs, of which she had either 2 or 3. And while the girl was outside the house, Ashley, as a rule, went into her room to conduct a quick inspection of her daughter's personal belongings. Only this time, the search was connected with the fact that Ashley heard some information from one of the students, who was also a close friend of Carly's. This girl herself approached Ashley and said that she had recently been very worried about Carly. And the reason for this concern was that Carly began to drink and use prohibited substances much more often. According to her friend, Carly literally could not imagine her life without weed. She seemed to not know how to function without it. Therefore, she was afraid for Carly, deciding that she had developed an addiction to prohibited substances. Hearing this information, Ashley took the opportunity and, as usual, went into her daughter's room. Just a few moments later, she found 4 smoking devices. Like any mother, seeing this, she was truly frightened for her daughter. Obviously, Ashley did not want Carly, with such potential, to direct her life down the wrong path. And while the woman was thinking about how best to proceed, Carly managed to return home and then go to her room and see her mom on the bed with vapes in her hands. And I must say that the next part of this story was so frightening that I'm not even sure if any conversation took place between them at all. Most likely, Carly simply left her room and went to her mother's bedroom to take the gun that Ashley kept in the bedside table in case of uninvited guests or other emergencies. And when the girl returned to her room, she shot her mother in the face 3 times. After Carly shot her mother, she went to the kitchen to take her phone. She realized that now she had to get rid of her stepfather. Therefore, Carly sent him a message from Ashley's phone and asked when he was planning to return home. Having received an answer, the girl took out her phone and began to correspond with friends, talking about how she was going crazy because of an emergency that happened right at her home. Given the fact that most of Carly's friends were still teenagers, they simply did not have the opportunity to get into a car and get to her. Therefore, they just began to ask her various questions about what really happened. However, Carly answered rather sparingly. According to some reports, during the correspondence, one of the girl's friends even advised her to contact the police, but she only replied that she would not do that. In fact, only one of Carly's friends eventually made it to her. And since at that time, she had not yet reached her majority, I will not name her real name. So, when Carly called this girl and said that she needed help, she immediately went to her father and asked to drive her to her friend's house. Entering inside, the girl saw Carly, who was standing in the middle of the living room playing with her dogs. Seeing such a picture, she even got a little confused, since what was happening did not look like any emergency. And it was like that right up until Carly said, and I quote, "You're not afraid of corpses." After that, the girl took her friend to her room and showed her the corpse of her mother, which still lay on the floor. She even showed her the gun, mentioning that there were originally 6 cartridges in it. Moreover, Carly stated that she had saved the 3 remaining bullets for her stepfather, who, according to her, could return home at any second. Then Carly told her friend that she could go out into the backyard and sit there for a while she would deal with Heath. In the end, the girl followed her advice and went outside. Subsequently, many of those who were involved in the investigation of this case wondered why everything happened this way and why she did not try to escape. In my opinion, the main reason for such behavior was that this girl was the same age as Carly, and, seeing the body of a dead woman and her friend with a weapon in her hands, she simply decided that it would be safer for her if she would only do what she was told. From the testimony of the girl herself, it followed that sometime after she went outside, the sounds of gunshots thundered inside the house. Although it would be more accurate to say that at first only 1 shot was heard, which was accompanied by the screams of a man, and then 2 more. A moment later, the sounds of a struggle followed. Then Carly ran out into the backyard and told her friend to run. As a result, the girls jumped over the fence and ran away. It is known that at this moment they separated, and Carly's friend returned home, trying to run as far away from this place as possible. It is difficult to say what exactly was happening inside the house. According to Heath, Carly's stepfather, he barely had time to open the door when a gun was at his face. Fortunately, the first bullet only barely grazed his shoulder, and while he was fighting for his life and trying to wrench the gun out of Carly's hands, several more shots rang out. However, none of these bullets hit Heath, and when the girl discovered that she had run out of cartridges, she simply released the weapon from her hands and rushed to run. According to Heath, at the moment of the attack, Carly looked as if she had seen a demon. And importantly, the man did not even immediately understand what had actually happened. He suggested that a robber could have entered the house, and allegedly that's why the girl grabbed the gun. Moreover, he thought that the alleged criminal could still be inside, and only after Carly ran away did he decide to call the police and ask for help.
What's the location of your emergency? Your daughter tried to shoot you? Yeah. Shooting at me. Where is she at? She ran away. How old is she? 14. 14?
When the first police officers arrived at the scene, the man was lying in the living room, in real horror from what he saw. He only tried to explain to the police what Carly looked like and in what direction she could have run. After a short conversation, Heath was taken to the hospital. He lay on the floor in Carly's room with a towel on his face. "What are you saying?" Ashley with Mom. Meanwhile, the police officers who continued to inspect the house discovered one of the surveillance cameras that was installed in the garage. It turned out that it captured the moment during which the girl attacked her stepfather. Soon after that, Carly was found. She was just walking along the side of the road, about 2 miles from her house. During the interrogation, it became clear to the police that Carly and her mother had quite a lot of problems. The girl's school friends said that she had repeatedly talked about her intention to commit murder. According to them, she never hid her sincere hatred for her mother and stepfather. Carly believed that Ashley only complicated her life and deprived her of freedom. Carly's friend, who came to her house that day and saw the body of her mother, also went to the police station to tell her version of events. In addition, the police officers interviewed the girl's biological father, and he stated that the main reason for such an act was that Carly's stepfather regularly inclined her to intimacy. However, he had no evidence to support his speculation. Sometime after her arrest, Carly said that she had begun to hear some voices. Allegedly, recently she began to have obsessive thoughts of an extremely controversial nature. Around the same time, the girl's lawyers tried to declare her insane. Only they were never able to confirm this hypothesis and provide at least some expert opinions. Throughout the entire trial, they simply insisted on her innocence. However, representatives of the prosecution demonstrated all possible evidence indicating that Carly had indeed committed these crimes. Heath, who was also present in the courtroom, spoke about how he found the body of his wife. According to him, he ran up to Ashley to check her pulse, and then removed the towel from her face and realized that she was dead. One of Carly's close friends also appeared in the courtroom to give her testimony. This was the same girl who approached Ashley and told her about her concern for Carly's behavior. In her opinion, she was not going through the best of times. It seemed to her that Carly had chosen the wrong path. However, every time she tried to talk to her about it, it all ended in a major quarrel. Therefore, she decided to turn to her mother, considering that this was the right decision. In the end, taking into account all the evidence, testimony, as well as records from a number of video cameras, the jury made a decision and sentenced Carly Gregg to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
Ms. Gregg, please rise and come to the podium, along with your attorneys. All right, the verdicts appear to be in proper form. Verdict of the jury is count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant, Carly Madison Gregg, guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. Count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant, Carly Madison Gregg, guilty of attempted murder as charged in the indictment. Count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant, Carly Madison Gregg, guilty of tampering with evidence as charged in the indictment.
Proof of the court, in fact, Carly Madison Gregg was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder and attempted murder, as well as another 10 years for falsification of evidence. Her lawyers tried to get a life sentence with the possibility of parole, but this attempt never met with success. The story of Carly Gregg is not just a criminal chronicle. It is a tragedy that forces us to rethink our understanding of the child's psyche. A brilliant mind, high grades, and academic achievements can hide deep psychological problems that we often do not notice or do not want to notice. The first warning signs were obvious: a fascination with cold weapons, an incident at school, self-harm, alcohol, and drugs. But the system for working with troubled teenagers failed, sending her to an alternative school, changing antipsychotic drugs, unfinished therapy. All these are only temporary measures that did not solve Carly's underlying problems. Parental control, prohibitions, and restrictions that Ashley applied only exacerbated the situation. Instead of building a trusting relationship with her daughter, the mother created an atmosphere of total control, which only intensified the teenager's protest and aggression. Checking the phone, banning communication with the father, constant supervision. All this did not protect Ashley, but on the contrary, provoked the tragedy. An especially alarming signal was that Carly's friend came to Ashley with concern about her daughter. When teenagers themselves express anxiety for their peer, this is a serious reason not just to punish the child, but to turn to professional psychologists and psychiatrists. Unfortunately, the last inspection of her daughter's room became fatal for Ashley. What could have been done differently? Firstly, it was impossible to keep weapons in a house where a mentally unstable teenager lives. Secondly, it was necessary to complete the course of therapy and not change medications without careful monitoring of the child's reaction. Thirdly, it was worth establishing healthy communication between mother and daughter instead of a system of prohibitions and punishments. Today, Carly Gregg will serve a life sentence. But this story is not about punishment. It is about warning. About how important it is to see behind the excellent grades the real child with their problems and fears. About the fact that intelligence and academic performance are not a guarantee of mental health. And about the fact that sometimes teenagers call for help in the most destructive way. If you notice alarming signs in your child, sharp mood swings, interest in weapons, self-harm, substance abuse, do not try to solve these problems with prohibitions and punishments. Seek help from professionals before it's too late. If this story made you think about your children, subscribe to my channel Detective Brooks Stories, where we continue to analyze real cases and learn vital lessons from them that can save someone's life.